Okay, imagine this. You walk into a grocery store, fill up your cart, and at the checkout, there's zero tax. It's a really simple idea, right? But it's one that could totally change your daily budget. Today, we're diving into a huge policy debate happening in Japan. Should groceries be completely tax-free? Is this a much-needed lifeline for families, or is it a fiscal time bomb waiting to go off? Let's break it down. So, that's the big question right here. On the surface, it seems like a no-brainer, a clear win for everybody. But as you're about to see, the answer is way more complicated than it looks. There are some really powerful arguments on both sides, touching on everything from economic fairness to the entire future of Japan's social security system. So, what's actually on the table? Well, right now in Japan, most food items have a reduced tax rate of 8%. The proposal is to slash that all the way down to 0. Now, to really get why this is such a massive deal, we first have to talk about one key economic concept. And that word is regressivity. See, a consumption tax is what we call regressive because everyone pays the same rate no matter how much you earn. This means the tax takes a much, much bigger bite out of a low-income family's budget than it does from a wealthy one. And this idea of fairness, it's right at the heart of this entire argument. All right, first up, let's look at the case for making groceries tax-free. The people who support this see it as more than just a tax cut. For them, it's a powerful tool for making life better and for boosting the economy. The argument for this policy really stands on three main pillars. First, it's direct, immediate help for households, especially those who are struggling to get by. Second, it's seen as an economic stimulus, freeing up money that people are going to spend somewhere else. And third, it's about making the system fairer by tackling that whole regressivity problem head-on. And the benefit here isn't just theoretical. It's something you'd actually feel. For a pretty typical family that spends about 300,000 yen a year on groceries, getting rid of that 8% tax means an extra 24,000 yen in their pocket. And look, that's not a small amount of cash. That's money that can go toward bills, school supplies, or maybe even savings. This isn't some brand new radical idea either. Several other major economies like the UK and Canada already do this. They have a zero-rate tax on most food. They basically decided that food is a fundamental necessity that shouldn't be taxed like some kind of luxury item. So supporters in Japan are just asking, why not here too? But of course, there's another side to this story. Opponents are saying, hold on a second. While the idea sounds great, they argue the real-world consequences could be really, really severe, especially for Japan's national budget and its social programs. So the case against this is just as serious, and it focuses on three big risks. The first is the absolutely massive hole this would blow in the national budget. The second, and this is a really fascinating counterargument, is that it's actually not fair. And third, it could put the very social safety nets that so many people depend on in real jeopardy. This is the number at the absolute center of the opposition's argument, 4 trillion yen. That is the estimated loss in tax revenue every single year. To put that into perspective, that is a staggering amount of money that would just suddenly disappear from the government's budget. So the multi-trillion yen question is, where does that tax money go? Well, a huge chunk of it is specifically set aside for Japan's social security system. We're talking pensions, healthcare, and elder care, services that are absolutely critical, especially in a society with an aging population. The fear is that a 4 trillion yen shortfall would be a direct threat to these essential programs. Okay, so now that we've seen both sides, let's put their arguments head-to-head. Because this is where the debate really heats up, and you start to see the core conflict. Who is this policy really for? This whole debate over fairness is fascinating. The pro side says it helps the poor the most because food makes up a bigger percentage of their spending. But the con side flips that completely. They argue that wealthy people who buy more expensive groceries, fancy steaks and organic vegetables, they actually get a bigger tax break in absolute terms. So which is fairer, a universal break for everyone or more targeted help? And what about the economy? Proponents see a clear-cut stimulus. People save money on groceries, so they spend it on other things, boosting the whole economy. But opponents are pretty skeptical. They say, look, food is a necessity. People are going to buy roughly the same amount whether there's a tax or not. So that promised economic boom, they say it's far from a sure thing. And that brings us back to the 4 trillion yen question. How do you replace that money? Proponents have an answer. Raise taxes on big corporations and on investment income for the wealthy.
But opponents fire right back, saying that's a risky gamble. Higher corporate taxes could just drive companies to move overseas, and higher investment taxes could cause money to flee the country, potentially shrinking the tax base even more.
So after laying out all these arguments, you can see we're left with a really fundamental choice. There are no easy answers here. It's just a series of incredibly complex trade-offs that society has to weigh. Let's just boil it all down one last time. For households, it's a choice between immediate, across-the-board relief versus more efficient, targeted aid. Fiscally, it's a bet on economic growth versus the stability of Social Security funding. And when it comes to fairness, it's a debate between lowering a regressive tax for everybody or providing more direct support just to those who need it most. So we end with this question for you. If you were the one calling the shots, what would you prioritize? The security that comes from a stable, predictable source of revenue that funds all those essential services, or the immediate, real-world relief from the daily financial burdens that weigh on every single family? It's a choice that really defines what a nation's priorities are.